Oh, hi, all the participants from the Asia Virtual Academy. Thank you very much for coming to our third season of the Asia Virtual Academy 2022, the fourth series. And this time, I think we will have a new forms of the Asia Virtual Academy program, as we promised that we will have a forum series, 3 forums, and this is our first forum. And the topic is about the Asia-Pacific economic growth in the post-COVID-19 era. So I appreciate all of the participants and our guests and our partner institutions for your fully and long-standing support. And before that, I think I will introduce you a new partner institution for our Asia Virtual Academy. That would be the Oral Roberts University from Oklahoma, Tulsa, in the United States. They will send the keynote speakers for the third forum. And because of the time differences, I'm not sure that they are free to join us live for this time. But of course, all students will watch the videos afterward. And today we have one guest from our partner institutions. That would be the Dean of Office of International Affairs, Professor Zheng Yaoting. Hi.
Hello. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you very much for coming.
Yes.
Would you like to give us some of the welcome greetings?
Yes. Okay, thank you. I think this is the wonderful online meeting hosted by National University of Kaohsiung. I think in the past semester, we did have a very fruitful discussion over several topics. And I hope this year we will also have a very fruitful and very wonderful online meeting for this semester. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean Zheng. And of course, the National Pingtung University is our great partners. And you share about the university social responsibility for last series. And this series, we will join our second forum for AI and technology. Thank you very much, Dean Zheng. And today, I also like to honorable invite and welcome Professor Ebenezer Florano. And Professor Florano is from the University of Philippines, Diliman. He is the 2020 Taiwan Fellowship Researchers, and now join us in National Kaohsiung University for 3 months of research. And I will shortly introduce Professor Ebenezer Florano. Professor Florano, he is in the Department of Public Administrations, School of Public Administration in University of Philippines, Diliman. And his area of expertise is public policy and policy analysis, and also about environmental governance, climate change, and disaster risk. And also, he's also the renowned scholars in the field of international relations. I think during his research is also about the post-pandemic policy for food securities and about the case study of Philippines' response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think he would be a best moderator than me, of course, to moderate these forums, because today's topic is about the economic impacts and opportunities, because we're still in a pandemic, but perhaps we're going to enter into the epidemic period, hopefully. So in the post of the pandemic eras, what is the prospects and challenges for the Asia Pacific regions? And the Professor Franos he got his PhD in public administrations from the International Christian University, Graduate School of Public Administration in Tokyo, Japan. And he's got his master's degree in international relations at the International University of Japan. It's also for the Graduate School of International Relations in Niigata, Japan. Okay, so without further delay, I think I will give the floor to Professor Florano for introduction of today's speakers of the forum. Thank you very much. The floor is yours. Thank you.
谢谢 Mike Sensei. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our international audience. For my kababayan in Bicol, marahay na hapon. To our participants from Indonesia, salamat sayang to all of you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce first our speaker, our esteemed speaker, and then the staff will show you, will show you the video presentation. And we will do that for the three speakers. And then we will be asking questions later. But I would like to invite the audience to actually type if they could already type their questions. And if your questions are the same, you might just want to click the one that is similar to yours. So the questions which have the most clicked will be read first. Okay, so just a little reminder, could you kindly tell us to whom you are addressing the question, to one speaker or to all speakers. So let me start with our first speaker. Our speaker is Assistant Professor of the Bicol University College of Business, Economics, and Management in Daraga Albay, and has been teaching for 10 years already, since 2012. He is actually completing his academic requirements for a PhD in agricultural economics at the University of the Philippines. He has specialization also in management, teaching, and political economy. And aside from that, he has been doing lots of research, extension, and development projects since 2003. So that will be about 8 years. He's going to talk about Philippine post-pandemic economic recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, may I give to you Assistant Professor Elmer Lorenzana.
A pleasant day to all. I am honored to present to you the post-pandemic economic recovery of the Philippines, particularly on implementing the fiscal policy to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. Based on the data from the Department of Health as of April 3, 2022, there were 3,679,629 number of individuals confirmed positive for COVID-19, of which 35,967 are active cases and a total of 56,343 persons died. This pandemic has brought tremendous shock in the Philippine economy. Economic recessions, higher unemployment rate, and increases in prices. Economic policy makers and managers have implemented monetary and fiscal policies to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. My discussion is focused on the fiscal policy and some of the economic strategies needed at the local level to recover from economic recession, such as strengthening the enabling environment for businesses, repositioning of business models to take advantage of the opportunities. I will also focus on the specific impact of the pandemic on the tourism sector. The Philippine economy is in a position of economic growth and development. Real gross domestic product growth had an average at above 6% over a 10-year period, or 6.4% average from 2010 to 2019. However, due to COVID-19 pandemic, the government imposed stringent lockdown measures to save lives and help the public health sector. For this, it has constrained several economic activities. Unfortunately, the Philippine economy, like many other economies around the world, suffered from the lockdowns. Its economy contracted, amounting to an average real gross domestic product decline of 10%, of which an average of 10.7% decline in consumption and 13.9% decline in investment. Service and industry sectors were greatly hurt. Tourism is one of the most important areas for the service sector. During the pandemic, many hotels, restaurants, resorts, and other businesses related to tourism were closed. This affects so much the local economy of the various provinces dependent on tourism economic activities. As shown in the graph, the Philippines has experienced the longest recessions or sustained economic downturn since 1972. According to the World Bank, a 2-month loss of income could increase the poverty rate by 3.3%. However, the reopening of the businesses in the last quarter of 2020 amid the new normal, easing of community quarantines nationwide, seasonal factors such as uptick in demand during the holiday season contribute to the increase in volume of sales and orders. Thus, it contributes to an increase in annual growth rate in percent of industry sector of 8.2% and service sector of 5.3%. To mitigate the effect of COVID-19 pandemic, the government has implemented an expansionary fiscal policy. This is the Bayanihan Act. It provides immediate response that deals with the effect of pandemic through provision of economic stimulus or social amelioration measures seeking to aid the pandemic hit sectors. Bayanihan means being a bayan. It is thus used to refer to a spirit of communal unity and cooperation. In the middle of the pandemic, President Duterte signed the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprise, or CREATE law. It lowered the income tax rate paid by corporation. However, the challenge is whether corporation will spend their windfalls to expand operation or hire new workers in situation where the demand for goods and services in the economy is still rather anemic. CREATE's tax cuts will almost certainly drain the public funds, deplete much needed funds for pandemic response, blew up budget deficit in the coming months, and compel government to borrow even more on the top of the record borrowings it already incurred during the pandemic. The expansionary fiscal policy is also reflected in the increase of national budget. The Philippine national budget for 2022 is 5.2 trillion pesos or 104 billion US dollar. The Department of Education gets the biggest share in the budget. The pandemic response is embedded in the budget of the Department of Health. These pandemic responses consist of provision of benefits and compensation to the health workers, purchase of booster shots, upgrading of healthcare facilities, and procurement of hospital equipment, assisting the indigent patients, and provision of medical scholarship to the health sector. Moreover, the specific pandemic recovery consists of social amelioration program, pension for indigent senior citizens, and conditional cash transfer to the poor household. The pandemic recovery is mainly focused on supporting the most vulnerable sectors of the society. The national budget for 2022 is equivalent to 23.3% of the gross domestic product and larger by 11.5% than the fiscal year 2021 budget. Let us look into a more specific sector hit by the pandemic, the tourism sector. It contributes to the Philippine economy, to its gross domestic product, provides more business opportunities in the local areas, and consequently generates local employment. From 2018 to 2022, the tourism industry contributes to gross domestic product of more than 12%. But during the pandemic, it declined its contribution to the gross domestic product from 12.8% of 2018 to 5.4% of 2020. The half-capacity operation of hotels, restaurants, and other related businesses and tourism, and some of them closed their businesses operation, have contributed to increase the unemployment rate. As of September 2021, 3.9 million Filipinos were unemployed. President Duterte has adopted a 10-point policy agenda to fast-track and sustain country's economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. I categorize it into health, economy, education, and government policies. In health, strengthen healthcare capacity, accelerate and expand vaccination program, and the aspect of economy, further reopen the economy and expand public transport capacity. Education, resume face-to-face learning, and government policy, reduce restriction on domestic travel and standardize local government unit requirements, relax requirements for international travel, accelerate digital transformation through legislative measures, provide for enhanced and flexible emergency measure through legislation, shift the focus of decision-making and government reporting to more useful and empowering metrics, medium-term preparation for pandemic resilience. As I have mentioned, to make the economy recover from the recession due to pandemic, expansionary monetary and fiscal policy were implemented. The monetary policies consist of lowering the interest rate and reducing the reserve requirement ratio. In doing so, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas aims to encourage people to take out new loans for, say, businesses, condo units, or car, all of which will increase spending, thus growth. The fiscal policies include increasing government spending to cause a ripple effect in the economy so that a peso of public spending might generate more than a peso in extra economic output. This is called the multiplier effect, provision of amelioration to the vulnerable sector in the economy, and lowering the income tax rate paid by corporation. The fiscal policies intend to increase the disposable income of consumers and the earning of corporation. This in turn allows them to spend more in the economy. Consequently, it will increase the gross domestic product. This should cascade down to the business sectors, particularly to micro entrepreneurs and tourism industry. They are motivated to revive and expand their business operation because of the available credit with lower interest rate, and consumers are willing to spend more money. Consequently, it will generate more employment and decrease the unemployment rate. Moreover, the monetary and fiscal policies intend to revive the business and opening of new ventures, but this should be complemented by the enabling environment provided by the local government unit by improving the infrastructure facilities, promoting business resiliencies, and strengthening the business competitiveness. The pandemic has brought about new opportunities for businesses to exploit. These opportunities come in form of technologies and business pivots These opportunities come along with labor needs and require reskilling, training, and education. All these come into play in the country's post-pandemic economic recovery under the health crisis brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Monetary and fiscal policies play an important role. However, the pandemic being essentially a health crisis, these policies are rendered insignificant without sound health public measures. The crafting and implementation of sound and monetary and fiscal policies will only ever be as good as it is intended to be if it is equated with equally sound public health measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Elmer Lorenzana, for your very informative presentation. I'm sure the participants were able to clearly understand your message through your diagrams. And because you talked about monetary and fiscal policies, okay, and then how it will affect, consumer spending, government spending, and also perhaps increase business activities specifically for the tourism sector. So employment will be created and it will redound to increase in GDP. But you ended your presentation by saying that all of this will go to naught if there is no sound public health measure. I'm sure your students are very proud of you, Professor Elmer Lorenzana. And I would actually request our participants from all over the world, specifically from those from the Philippines, from Taiwan, and from Indonesia, if you can write your questions now and then like also the questions that will be posted so that we will know which questions to prioritize. As you all know, we have limited time. Okay, so thank you very much again, Professor Lorenzana. Now, for me to introduce the second speaker, she is a lecturer at the Department of Economics and Development Studies, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Tanjungpura. Has published in many journals, wow, and is an author of several books, okay? And she is also a reviewer for research under the Directorate General of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology. And she is a very versatile writer because she is also a reviewer for several reputable journals indexed in the Web of Science and Scopus. And for that, she was awarded as the second top reviewers 2020 to 2021 in Asian and Pacific Migration Journal, which is also indexed in the Web of Science and Scopus. She has a master's degree and PhD degree, which she obtained from the Australian National University. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Fariastuti Djafar.
Welcome to Asia Virtual Academy Spring Forums 2022. I'm Fariastuti Djafar from the Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Tanjungpura, Indonesia. I'm going to talk about economic growth and regional development after the COVID-19 pandemic in Indonesia. Let's start with recent economic situation. The COVID-19 has caused recession in the global economy. The economy declined by 3.5% in 2020 compared to 1.7% in 2009 during the global financial crisis. The recession in Indonesia was less severe than among emerging markets and developing economies. Nevertheless, Indonesia cannot avoid from the impact of the COVID-19. Over 3.8 million people died by May 2021 in Indonesia due to the virus. Small and medium-sized firms and businesses in contact-intensive services sectors, such as transport and accommodation, were badly affected by the COVID-19. Around 1.8 million Indonesians became unemployed from February 2020 to 2021, and another 3.2 million people were out from the labor force. At the same time, around 300,000 youth were looking for a job in the job market. Moreover, around 2.8 million people became poor by September 2020 out of total 27.6 million poor. People in urban areas accounted for 80% of the new poor. In order to create inclusive economic growth, it needs to explore the economic situation at the regional level. Here is the map of Indonesia. Indonesia has a total of almost 2 million kilometers square land area and around 16,000 islands, including 7 big islands, namely Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Papua Maluku, Sumatra, Java, and Bali, Nusa Tenggara. The islands are connected by flight and sea transport. By 2021, Indonesia has a total of 34 provinces, 514 districts or cities, around 7,000 sub-districts, and around 83,000 villages. Table 1 shows economic indicators by selected provinces in 2021. There are two groups of provinces, namely the largest 5 and the smallest 5 contributors to Indonesia's gross domestic product or GDP. 4 out of 5 largest contributors to GDP are provinces in Java. They are DKI Jakarta, Jawa Timur, Jawa Barat, and Jawa Tengah. Meanwhile, all provinces which had the smallest contributors to GDP are located outside Java, namely in Sumatra, Sulawesi, and Maluku Island. The largest 5 contributors to GDP also share the largest population size, which was around 10 to 50 million in each province, while the smallest 5 contributors to GDP share the smallest population size, which was 2 million or less in each province. Now we look at per capita gross regional domestic product or GRDP. Only per capita GRDP in Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia, which was higher than Indonesia per capita GDP. Per capita GRDP in Jakarta was around 275 million rupiah. Per capita GRDP of all provinces in the largest 5 contributors to GDP was over 38 million rupiah for each province, while the highest per capita GRDP in the smallest 5 provinces was not more than 42 million rupiah. Now, poverty rate. Poverty rate in 2 provinces in the largest 5 and 3 provinces and 3 provinces in the smallest 5 contributors to GDP were lower than the national poverty rate, which was 10.14%. The number of poor people is concentrated in Java. Table 2 shows economic growth by selected provinces from 2019 to 2021. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused a negative economic growth rate in Indonesia in 2020, which was minus 2.7%. Economic growth rate returned to be positive in 2021, although this rate was still lower than the rate in 2019. This pattern occurs in all provinces in Indonesia. Economic growth rates between provinces generally are not much different. The highest economic growth rate occurs even in small 5 GDP contributor in Gorontalo and Maluku Utara, which was about 6%. Jakarta had the highest economic growth rate among the largest 5 contributors to GDP. In order to reduce regional disparity, government of Indonesia started to implement regional autonomy since 2010. However, the inter-regional disparity was greater during the period of regional autonomy than the earlier periods. The disparity in income per capita between regencies or municipalities was higher than disparity between provinces. Widening inequality also occurs between a small group of high-skilled workers and the majority group of low-skilled workers. During 2002 to 2012, 20 million new jobs were created, concentrated in low-skilled jobs. The increasing education level of the population does reduce the difficulty of employers finding professional workers. The business owner in a province that lacks a supply of high-skilled workers recruit the workers from the outside the province. The workers from the region, which has the excess supply of low-skilled labor, migrate to other regions of Indonesia, even abroad, to earn higher wages. Many Indonesians work in Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and the other countries. The centralized business activities, especially manufacturing industry in Jakarta and its surroundings, created a supply problem outside Java, especially at the early COVID-19 pandemic. Jakarta and its surrounding was the first region which implemented the large-scale social restriction from 10 to 23rd April 2020 due to a large number of COVID-19 cases. Prohibition of activities in school, workplace, and public places, including public transport, stopped product shipments from Java to outside Java. The implication of regional disparity during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the early COVID-19 pandemic, there was a problem of product supply, including face masks from Jakarta to outside Java. Some local pharmacy had to make a rule on the maximum purchase of 5 face masks per buyer. As a solution, the local pharmacy started to produce and sell reusable cloth masks while they're waiting for the mask supply from Java. Thousands of migrant workers return home, especially from overseas, both through legal and illegal mechanisms. Meanwhile, local job market doesn't change much compared to the pre-migration situation in terms of low wage and limited job opportunity. Some return migrants then remigrate to the other region in Indonesia. A study in an Indonesian village found that remigration was mostly due to remittances for the consumption and investment, limited job opportunities, low wage, lack of entrepreneurship, and social network support for remigration. Then we come to final remarks. Inclusive economic growth through reducing regional disparity will not change significantly in the near future after the COVID-19 pandemic due to a complex problem of regional development. Will the plan to move the capital city of Indonesia from Jakarta to Kalimantan in 2024 be effective in accelerating regional development outside Java and reducing regional disparity? It is still a big question mark since Indonesia used to simplify the complex issues of development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Djafar, for talking about economic growth and regional development after the COVID-19 pandemic in Indonesia. I think we certainly appreciate your presentation about regional autonomy in Indonesia, but we somehow miss how this was able to cope with the pandemic, and also what were the economic measures, okay, for to attain to recover from this pandemic that we all experienced. Maybe you can talk about that more later. And also, but perhaps a quick question. I noticed that in one of your slides, Maluku Utara did not experience negative growth, economic growth in 2020, and actually posted highest economic growth in 2021, 16.40. Maybe we can learn from this because it's an exception, it's an outlier. Perhaps you can talk about this later. Now we'll go to the third presentation. Our third speaker is economist and instructor at the Bicol University. And she is head of the economics department from 2013 up to 2015. She has done economic researches about total economic valuation, monitoring and evaluation, agro-technology. She is now I don't know if it's a student or a candidate for PhD in agricultural economics from the University of the Philippines in Los Baños. Okay, she has she is really an economist at heart because she has a master's degree in economics from Bicol University and University of the Philippines, Diliman, and a cum laude in business economics from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, to talk about to answer the question: are we moving forward and fast? Outlook on Philippine economic growth in the post-COVID-19 era. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of let us welcome the presentation of Professor Ilona Matias.
Afternoon. Are we moving forward and fast? Outlook on Philippine economic growth in the post-COVID-19 era. COVID-19 has brought health scare and economic distress. That is evidenced in the poverty statistics of the Philippines for the first semester of 2021. Poverty incidence has risen from 21% to 23.7%. That translates to 26.14 million Filipinos living below the poverty threshold. The poverty threshold of 2,416 per month is what is needed to meet the basic food and non-food requirements. The subsistence incidence has also risen from 8.5% in 2018 to 9.9%. That is equivalent to 10.94 million Filipinos who cannot afford their basic food needs. That is partly explained by what happened in the business sector as we experienced strict lockdown. In March 2020, 61.7% of micro-enterprises, 49.1% of small, and 35.8% of medium-sized firms lost revenue. 26 to 40% of them reported 30% revenue decline. As the revenues plunged, businesses temporarily laid off workers. Around two-thirds of MSME laid off workers from the service and manufacturing sectors. That resulted macroeconomically to a negative 7% growth rate of GDP in the second quarter of 2020. prior to the economic lockdown brought by the pandemic, the Philippines was enjoying high growth rate, in fact, one of the highest in Asia. Here in first quarter of 2019, that growth rate was 5.9% and 6.6% in the fourth quarter of the same year. We have entered into a recession in 2020 with 5 quarters of negative GDP growth rate. We, however, were able to rebound in the second quarter of 2021 with 12% growth rate, 6.9% year-on-year growth in the third quarter of 2021, and 7.7% in the fourth quarter of the same year. For the entire year of 2021, the annual GDP growth rate was 5.67%, which is better than the target of 5.5%. So are we there yet? Are we back to our pre-pandemic GDP level? In the 2019, as the 2019 ends, the Philippine GDP was recorded at 5.26 trillion pesos, but in 2021, as the year ends, it was recorded at 5.2 trillion pesos. That means that we are not yet back to the pre-pandemic GDP level, but we are close. And we are expected to return to this level by 2022. As to GDP components, comparing the 2019 and 2021 figures, we can see that all except government expenditures have plunged by a negative 4.1% for household final expenditure, negative 21.9% for investment, negative 9.7% for exports, and negative 11.4% for imports. Although, again, we're not yet back to the pre-pandemic levels, the 2021 year-on-year growth shows a strong rebound by the Philippine economy, especially in the investment sector and the consumption, in the investment component and the consumption component. In terms of GDP by industry, all have also experienced decline, but in 2021, industry and services have rebounded by 8.2% for industry and 5.3% for services. So all sectors and components of GDP made headways in 2021, except agriculture, forestry, and fishing, with a slight decline. If we dissect these figures further, we would see that most of the sectors are not yet back in their pre-pandemic levels, except the electricity, information, financial and insurance activities, public administration, and human health, in which the 2021 figures have already surpassed the 2019 levels. However, in the third quarter and fourth quarter of 2021, there was a strong rebound by the construction sector. Transportation, accommodation, and food services have also registered double-digit growth in the third quarter and fourth quarter of 2021. In terms of employment, the pre-pandemic level of the number of employed persons was 42,953,000, but that figure is now 43 million in January 2022. In that case, the numbers of employed persons is already back to its pre-pandemic level. But the unemployment rate is 6.4% in January 2022, which is still higher than 5.4% in 2019 of July. That simply means that it's still harder to find a job in 2022 January than in July of 2019. In terms of inflation, as the economy opened in the months of August and September, inflation rate peaked at 4.4%, and then it declined to 4.2% and has steadily declined to 3% in January 2022. But because of the Russia and Ukraine war, which created a negative supply shock of oil, and Philippines being a net exporter of oil, the BSP has adjusted its inflation forecast for 2022 from 3.4% to 3.7%. So what brought us to this scenario in 2020, and why are we rebounding in 2021? So this chart gives us the picture of the daily COVID-19 cases per million people. Comparing our figures with our ASEAN neighbors, Philippines is actually experiencing very low COVID-19 cases, which is actually a good sign with, for our economy, meaning we can now open the economy more and induce more economic activities. However, in the stringency index, which is composed of school closures, workplace closure, and travel bans among the ASEAN countries or top economies in the ASEAN, in the Southeast Asia, Philippines is the most stringent. Therefore, if there will be improvement in the stringency index, if we start doing face-to-face classes and lower our travel bans, the economy can actually be helped more. The economy loses 12 billion for every week that the school remains closed, according to the NEDA chief Carl Chua. So are we moving forward? Yes, but are we moving fast? Let's compare our growth with our ASEAN neighbors. Looking at this picture, we would see an image of recovery for all the ASEAN 5. In fact, Singapore is already back to its pre-pandemic level. Philippines has actually recovered. It has been a laggard for 2022 in terms of recovery. But in 2021, we posted one of the highest GDP growth rates. Our neighbor Thailand is recovering at a slower pace. So for 2022, the forecast by the economists is that Philippines will grow by 6.5%. IMF forecasts Philippines to grow by 6.3%, while ADB forecasts that the Philippines will grow by 5.5%. The Philippine government actually has forecasted an increase in our GDP growth by 7% to 9% in 2022. So what can drive the economy? One is it's expected that we will have increase in domestic demand because of one, normalization of economic activities such as opening of schools, and also increased remittances. Our consumption is 75% of the GDP, and it is supported by a strong remittances from abroad. As other economies recover, there will be more remittances in the Philippines, and that will boost domestic demand. Because of the low cases of COVID-19, there will be more accommodating travel requirements, which will increase tourism activities. Also, the investment component of the GDP can increase further because of the three laws enacted by the Duterte administration in the past 3 or 4 months, including the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, Foreign Investment Act, and Public Service Act. These laws are expected to rake higher foreign direct investments. Also, because of the elections, it's expected that Philippines will experience higher spending. Lastly, structurally, Philippines has strong demographic makeup because of young and educated population. On the other hand, what can be the headwinds or possible risks to the economy? Number one is the inflationary pressure because of that comes from both the demand side and the supply side of the economy. As mentioned, we are affected by the supply shock, and the Philippines also last year the Philippines experienced negative shocks because of climatic disturbances. And so this year, what if there will be typhoons and climatic disturbances, the supply side and negative supply shocks can induce or create inflationary pressures. There is a potential of new variants um, or which can limit or economic activities. Also, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas has announced that it will increase its policy rate by the second half of the year, which can deter local investments. And also, our neighbors such as Korea and China are experiencing higher COVID-19 cases. So, what happens to our neighbors, which are our trading partners, can also affect our export and even tourist visitors. So, thank you very much for listening.
Dr. Ilona, Matias, for your presentation. It certainly is a good news for us Filipinos because from your presentation, we've learned that certainly we have moved forward, but it is not clear on your presentation where if we have moved fast enough to recover from the devastations brought by the pandemic in our country. And I can see, there's a potential for your paper and also that of Professor Elmer Lorenzana. You can, because Professor Lorenzana is, the paper talks about the the monetary and fiscal policies, and you talked about the effects already, okay? The big job is actually how to make the causality between the policies, among the policies and then the effects. Because you've said that we have rebounded in 2021, except in the sectors of agriculture, fisheries, and forestry. And some sectors we have, increased already, but not yet at the pre-pandemic level. And in some sectors already at the above average pandemic level. And even though we have already experienced, increase in employment, there's still underemployment. That's because the service sector has been affected. So good presentations. Congratulations, Professor Matias. I'm sure also your students from Bicol University are very, very proud of you. We would like to actually to ask our participants to write their questions. We have already received a question. We would like to receive more questions from the participants. Okay, we will have a 5-minute break. I'm sure for you to think about your questions. We will be back after 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
For your participation and for Dr. Director Tsushima Kakari.
You are writing about small old boat from Africa to part of Europe.
The size program, as you can see, also collect all the mission problem. Okay, for me,
Taiwan Iowa is the online SDGs Innovation Competition. This is Principal Yue Duan Quan, speaking from National University of Kaohsiung.
我们这一次的竞赛呢，透过学生跟老师，还有我们在地的社团，大家一起来发现问题、解决问题。
很高兴看到高雄大学2020国际青年永续领袖计划今年延续办理第2届，持续为国内外的青年提供实践社会关怀的机会，打造创新提案的交流平台。
It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you participants to the 2020 International Youth Sustainability Leadership Program, the United Nations Sustainability Goals Innovation Competition.
I'm happy to know that as an international community, we have this drive for innovation. This must be fostered at all costs. Innovation gives way to discover newer and better systems, ideas, and processes. Innovation leads to progress.
It has been a blessing for us to receive such tremendous support and to be able to participate in this competition with 2 teams made up of students from international class FEB UNTAD.
Taiwan, based on the results of the most recent survey, more than 80% of the island and the coast.
Versus the change in climate, which results in the rise of water temperature. Due to the rising temperature, drought and landfires
enable cities and communities putting life below water.
Myself, Saurabh Musle, I am representing Star Taking.
For education, raising people's awareness of forest values must be straightforward yet engaging to reach as many people as possible. Our project is designed specifically to use students for traveling, which includes professional trekking, healing or relaxation, and students of all levels.
People there, farmers, they only got 1/4 of the area income because of the single crop.
And local residents decided to preserve this historical site. After their hard work, 5 main buildings were
operational expenses. Its unique value proposition is that it addresses reproductive and maternal healthcare needs at a local scale with the use of available technological devices. Its unfair advantage is that there are no other up-to-date, reliable.
Discount inspires food to tempt consumers to make a purchase. The sharing fridge, on the other hand, in the community,
a halal ecosystem. Are there problems in the development of Indonesia halal ecosystem? From this background, we will present an innovative idea about
total amount of Dragon food production in Vietnam is quite high, over 1 million tons, indicating that Vietnamese farmers can get a lot of money.
Across the provinces of the Bicol region, based on the results of the early language literacy and numeracy assessment conducted in target school, this year, 47% of the learners from grade 1 to 3 have full pressure reading proficiency level, which
COVID are very small compared to their effort, which also takes a long time. Not to mention there is also a risk of crop failure, where a middleman earns the big profit in a short amount of time with small amount of things and effort. In fact,
to listen to your creative
is also different. Just like you all make up.
That we will create an impact and will achieve the.
That would be all. Thank you so much.
Okay, so welcome back. Marhay na hapon sa mga Bicolano. Salamat siyang from our participants in Indonesia and in Taiwan. I don't know if Xiao Wu Hao. That's a good afternoon in Chinese Taiwan. Okay, so I'll be asking. We already received some questions, and we'll be asking them later because we prepared common questions for all 3 resource speakers. Common questions because they tackle the topics anyway. in their presentation. So let's are the resource speakers already okay? So we'll start first with Professor Elmer Lorenzana, and then Dr. Fariastuti Djafar, and Professor Ilona Matias. Okay, so my first question is, okay, so we have enumerated lots of, or you've tackled in some ways economic policies and measures, okay, so that the Philippines and Indonesia could recover from by the devastations brought by the pandemic. Okay, so but are these economic policies and measures palliative, or will they make the economies resilient? Because we're not even sure that the pandemic is already over. There might be, because we're already talking about Omicron variants right now. So are these economic measures and policies palliative, or will they make our economies resilient? If palliative, what would you recommend so that the economies of the Philippines and Indonesia will be resilient against future? We're not praying for them, but then we don't really know. So that our economies will be resilient against pandemic in the future. So I would like to perhaps request 1 or 2 minutes response so that we can entertain more questions. So others might be able to learn from your answers. Professor Lorenzana?
Yes, good afternoon. Okay. Clear po ba ang boses ko? Is it
Yes,
clear?
yes, we can hear you very loud and clear.
So I think my discussion was focused on the monetary and fiscal policy. It's an automatic that if there is the recession, the government would change the monetary and fiscal policy. It would be an expansionary if there is a recession. I emphasize there that it is really hard, to measure the causality, whether the effect, the policy translated into increase in spending, increase in consumptions, of course, will contribute to the gross domestic product. At this time, I think that's a good topic to study the causality of the policy to the effects. I'm emphasizing there that it would be very difficult in the local level, I'm specific in the sector of the business, if these policies are not really supported with local policies. What I am emphasizing there is to really provide infrastructure facilities, business resiliency. In business, we have the so-called business continuity planning to really inculcate that one to the business sector. So what I am emphasizing, yes, it is good that we have the expansionary fiscal and monetary policy, but this is somehow supported also by the local policies. Specifically, I am emphasizing for the micro entrepreneurs, how to become more resilient. There are many ways to do that one. Really the infrastructure facilities, when we have the pandemic, everything is online, digital, so the business model is really shifted to online. Now, if this business sector could not really adjust to that kind of level, so it would be very hard for them. When you would like to survive in this after the pandemic, is really to convert or to change your business model. There are many opportunities provided by the pandemic. The online platform was already introduced. So what I am talking about, yes, we have this monetary and fiscal policy that would really provide the business environment for the governments, the consumption and spending also. But we need also to strengthen these local policies. And my emphasis, how do we assist these micro entrepreneurs in terms of providing them assistance to this new market that evolved after the pandemic. So that's what would really, I think, in my opinion, would really push the micro entrepreneurs really to recover and to survive. In the Philippines, we have almost 99 or 97% that are micro entrepreneurs. So micro entrepreneurs are basically the core sector in the economy. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Lorenzana. So we learned from you that the national fiscal and monetary policies should be supported at the local level because they're the ones really, battling the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy. I think that's a very good suggestion. Also, repositioning, the business model specifically for micro entrepreneurs. That's a very good suggestion. May we hear now from Dr. Djafar? Dr. Djafar?
Okay.
How can we make the economy of Indonesia more resilient against future pandemics?
Okay, I think in order to be really resilient sectors in economy, the government has to strengthen the agricultural sector. This is the case in Maluku Utara. Maluku Utara it has positive economic growth, like your question before.
Yes, please. We are very interested about the case of Maluku Utara.
Yes, Maluku Utara. Maluku Utara, the farmer exchange rate on average is higher than farmer exchange rate at the national level. Maluku Utara produce nutmeg, nutmeg and what else? Nutmeg, coconut, nutmeg and clove. But that is actually coincident with the price of coconut and nutmeg at the world level is increasing too. So there's a coincidence. So it looks resilience, but actually there's a coincidence with the increasing price in the world market. This is the first one, and then in the local level, actually when I did the research, there is increased the demand for fruits because during the pandemic, there is demand for like dragon fruit and an orange because people need more vitamin, need juice and everything to increase the immunity against the COVID-19. So I think government need to more pay attention on agricultural sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Djafar. So you're saying that we need to protect the prices of our agricultural products. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. How about from Professor Ilona Matias? So how can we, make our economy resilient against future pandemics?
Hello, good afternoon. The way I see it with your question on which ones are palliative and which ones have long-lasting effects. Some of them have palliative effects like social amelioration during the pandemic and the monetary policy. We've witnessed the central bank gradually decrease the reverse repurchase rate, which is the policy rate, from 4% in November 2019 to 2% in 2020. So they were able to reduce the rates from 4% to 2% in a year, just so to accommodate, to support economic growth during the pandemic. And on the other hand, what we see as things that will be catalyze economic growth are, of course, the 3 laws on foreign direct investments. So we have witnessed in the second quarter of 2021, our investment increased by more than around 80%. And that I actually saw a question on how much this will impact our economy. And the good Congressman Salceda actually estimated that there will be at least 299 billion increase in foreign direct investments in the next 5 years because of these 3 laws. And number 2 is that because we had to distribute aids, the government decided to expedite or intensify the Philippine ID system because we really had a difficult time in distributing the support. And so the Philippine ID system is actually a digital transformation which will make it easy for the government to distribute money whenever needed. So that's the second. And actually, the work from home setup has actually helped us, and I think that is with in consideration of the rising gas prices, that will also help us do work more efficiently. Um, Also, there is the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is actually supporting this the digital transformation. Its goal is actually financial inclusion, which means that people from remote places should also have better access to financial services. And because of the lockdown, we resorted to mobile payments, mobile transfers, and so it actually increased financial inclusion. So the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is actually very supportive to digital transformation. So those are the things that I see will have long-lasting impact to the economy.
Well, thank you very much. I do certainly agree with you that the ID system probably will help us, make our cash transfer easier, and also the digital transformation. I just don't know with FDI. I have questions with FDI, but because this includes a transfer of investments from another country, well, which is affected also by the pandemic. Okay, thank you very much for that. But I forgot to ask, could you kindly give us a qualified answer? Is the Philippine economy moving fast enough for economic recovery? Because you didn't answer that in your presentation. I missed that. We cannot hear you.
She's muted.
Turn on your microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Repeat from the beginning.
I purposely did not answer that, sir. So it's like an open question to everyone, dependent on how you see the data. But the truth is, the Philippines was one of the laggards in in the last quarter of 2020 up to like second quarter of 2021. But it just shoot up. The GDP just shoot up in the third quarter and fourth quarter. And if you see the comparison between the ASEAN 5, it posted a higher GDP growth rate in the fourth quarter of 2021. And I just recently read that PSA actually adjusted that growth rate of 7.7% to 7.8%. So that's actually still higher. So the figures is now 7.8% growth in 2021. I think even higher than Vietnam and the rest of Southeast Asia.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Maybe not just, I mean, it's still premature because we just entered the third year. So maybe in the future we can answer that. Now, our second set of questions will be about something to do with the sustainable development goals, because it's not just the economy. Economic development is not the end all or by all of our economic activities. It's all for human development. And the embodiment actually right now is the measurement of the sustainable development goals. And we know for a fact that this had been upended by the pandemic. Okay, we have to accomplish these goals by 2030. What do you think would happen now because of this pandemic? And then we had this economic recovery. Are our economic policies, monetary policies, able to catch up with the need to accomplish the sustainable development goal targets? And we will go again with Professor Elmer Lorenzana. Sir? Unmute yourself, sir.
Okay. So I think the question is, we have the target for sustainable development goal, and we have now the pandemic. So how we can somehow reach again the target because of the pandemic. In the Philippines, we have what you call that Ambition 2040, which is actually from the SDG translated to Ambition 2040, and we have the Philippine Development Plan, the PDP, and we have also the Regional Development Plan. Meaning, from the Sustainable Development, it cascade down to Ambition and to Regional Development Plan. So basically, all the efforts in the ground should be translated into attainment of the Sustainable Development Goal. I think at this time, the local economic managers, because what is the most important is in the ground, in the local level, because in the local level, these adjustments should be made. Meaning, I think it's really given that the strategies should be employed, should be adjusted in order to reach again the target for Sustainable Development Goal. I think the local economic managers should discuss at the local level. I think at this time there are many efforts that is actually being initiated in the local levels to really provide an analysis and come up in terms of recommendation. In our case, that we are in the state university and colleges, we are mandated for research in instruction, and basically we are tasked really to conduct researches somehow on how the local level can be readjusted in terms of reaching the target through a specific intervention can be made in the local level. I think the most important here is to readjust the
Okay, thank you very much for that, Professor Lorenzana. You mentioned about adjustments at the local level, and the state universities have a very important role to determine the proper readjustments. Dr. Djafar, can we hear from you? Yeah.
Yes.
How about obtaining the SDGs with this economic recovery after the pandemic?
Yes. Actually, Indonesia has a variety of social protection programs in order to help to achieve the SDGs. Yeah, even though the COVID-19 pandemic, I think will impact on the achievement of the achievement of SDGs. By 2020, actually, Indonesia ranked in SDGs increased from 102 to 101 out of 136 countries. Yeah. And then the main problem is, for instance, Indonesia is declining in the quality of education due to an unprepared system for online learning, and then increasing school dropout rates. Yeah, and then we hope that social protection program, especially for the family, which free for education for the student, for the poor families, will help Indonesia to achieve the sustainable development goals, even though it's not on time.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Djafar. So you mentioned about the need for adjusting also perhaps the targets for social protection and education. Professor Matias?
Yes, when we talk about these development goals, it spans from poverty issue to health issue, education, energy. So there's just a lot actually. And as mentioned in my report, the poverty level has actually increased from 2018 to 2021. So we're registering 23.7% poverty incidence, and that is translated to around 26.4 million Filipinos who are considered poor. And worse than that, actually, is the 9.9% food poor, which means that 10.94 million Filipinos have income that does not allow them to afford the basic food needs. So what do we do with that? So first is there are problems in market structures. Therefore, the goal should be how to lessen the prices of food and other basic needs. And this is more of a supply side problem. So if you talk about agriculture, then food prices, then you have to look at agricultural production and efficiency. And there are actually laws that are very good, like in my opinion, the rice tarification law is really bent on decreasing the price of rice, but it has it's actually, for the information of everybody, it's a shift from an import quota to a tariff. So we're basically taxing those who export rice to us. So whatever is collected from the tariff should be used to modernize the agricultural sector. But it's not, ideally that's what should happen, but it's not yet happening. Although an ERI research says that generally we have experienced lower price of rice because of the rice tariffication law. So I'm basically looking at both these policies on importation and increasing, improving the supply side of the market so that prices will go down. And so that's one of what we can do. And also in the terms of energy, we're here in Albay, the energy price is very high. So if you talk about like work from home, doing work from home, and people and businesses, if the energy price is very high, that's like high cost of operation. So that's one thing that we can maybe venture into, like alternative energy sources, and open the market for like European distributors of alternative energy, or European firms that specialize in alternative energy. So that's one. Basically, look at the supply side of the market, because apparently that's the problem. There's no problem. There's not much problem from the demand side, actually. So that's one way that the government can improve into.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Matias. You focus, I think, on SDG number 2, zero hunger, right? Okay, so
yes.
More agricultural productivity, but lessen the prices. And then you made mention also about lowering the operating cost of energy plants, so that we can have more less costly sources of energy. That's very good. Now we have several questions from our audience. Okay, these are specifically for. First, I will read all the questions because we don't have enough time anymore. And these are already addressed to some of two specific speakers. To Professor Lorenzana, was quantitative easing also considered or used in the monetary policy? What educational measures are also considered to combat future impact on HR, I think human resource competencies, by online classes? Could you kindly give us a 1-minute response to that? And then the other questions. Also from Jesse and Keith Herman, to Professor Matias, how would be the estimated impact of higher foreign investments as a driver? Is it large or small? What would be its impact also on competition and unemployment? Okay. And then there's another question, I think. Perhaps Dr. Djafar will be able to answer this. What are some lasting economic effects from COVID-19 that are not directly related to public health? I think Dr. Djafar also discussed this in her presentation. Maybe a shift in attitudes or government policies. I think that will be good for Dr. Djafar. So Professor Lorenzana, could you kindly answer in 1 minute the question?
So the question is all about what quantitative easing can be considered in monetary policy. I have discussed already the measures provided on the government in terms of monetary policy, like reducing the reserve requirement, reducing the interest rate. Now, as I mentioned, the question is if this monetary policy is really translated into increase in investment. So that's the purpose on that. Okay. The second thing is what educational measure we are also considering to combat future on human resource competency by online class. So I think the pandemic provided us also another market, or this is an opportunity also that we need to retool the workers to be aligned with the requirement of online. As I mentioned to you, like we have already most of the majority of the businesses, they like to engage in online. So there are requirements for us to retool those people engaged in online business, like to really be skillful in online.
Thank you very much. Now to Professor Matias.
Okay. So the question is the foreign direct investment. Why did I keep on mentioning that? Because in a span of like 3 months, the Duterte administration signed amended laws on foreign direct investments, and they were accommodating to foreign investors. And in fact, in terms of railway, shipping, airlines, and telecommunications, foreigners can now own up to 100% of that firm here in the Philippines. So how does that affect the supply side of the market? Well, basically, we're expecting Elon Musk to come to the Philippines through Starlink, right? So we will have more options in terms of telecommunication service providers, and the effect would be a better service. The expected effect would be a better service and a lower price. And that foreign direct investment, as I mentioned, is expected to be around 299 billion in the in the next 5 years. But some actually say that we cannot uh, quantify yet, so it can be actually higher than the figure given by Congressman Salceda. Thank
Okay,
you.
now, thank you very much, Professor Matias. Let us answer the question from Adam Reichert, Dr. Djafar. What are some lasting economic effects from COVID-19, not related directly to public health? Maybe a shift in attitudes, government policies, etc. Dr. Djafar?
Yes. One of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, I hope that government will be more efficient on the what you call it, the budget, especially for official travel. Indonesia is actually implemented regional policy since 2010, but everything, I mean, many things still, many activities are still concentrated in Jakarta. So during the pandemic, that the government also cut the budget for the travel costs. That I hope that will continue. So it will, though the budget will be allocated in other sectors, so it will increase economic good, such as in infrastructures and others. It is actually unpopular policies because I don't know whether why people like to travel. Yeah, but anyway, if we can be more efficient in what you call it, official travel, I think it will be more budget for other economic sectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Djafar. We have more questions, but it's a pity we cannot ask them now. But perhaps some of these questions might have already been answered during your presentations. I would like to thank you for your cooperation and for your brilliant presentations. Now I return the table to Mike Sensei. Mike Sensei?
Well, thank you very much, Professor Forano, for your excellencies in hosting this forum, and also my greatest gratitude to all the participants and
we have 400
speakers for the forums, Professor Lorenzana and Dr. Djafar and Professor Matias for your insightful analysis and comments on this issue. Actually, I myself asked one question, but
you can ask.
We're running out of time. Yeah, I was just asking about the inflection issues. I think it's a global issue now. I mean, it started from Europe, the United States, and now it's in our Asias. In Taiwan as well, we were encountering the inflections after the the very speedy growth after the pandemic. But we encountered inflation issues, and now for the central bank in Taiwan has already increased the interest rate. So I think that's actually I would like to bring these questions to all the speakers. But we're running out of time, so we can discuss further after the forum, and hopefully that next time we have more like at these occasions that also invite speakers, and maybe we can have another workshop or something.
We have 400 plus participants.
And that's what I'd like to express my gratitude to all the participants because that could be the largest one.
Really?
Yeah, hitting the historical records for the Asia Virtual Academy. Over 400.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. And of course, I think most from the Bicol University.
Yeah.
Students from Bicol University. Okay, so I would like to say that for the next forum on May 3rd, the topic of the forum will be the AI technology and industrial 4.0 technology. I think that's we have discussed about this, about the AI and IT technology applications, especially during this pandemic periods. And we think about that if it become a new normal after the post-COVID eras, I think the IT applications and about this smart manufacturing productions probably we have this great potential, especially for not touching. Keeping a distance, and that could be a very interesting topic. So I certainly welcome all the participants to and students from our partner institutions to come to the next forum, and hopefully that we can still keep that numbers for the next forum. Thank you very much again, Professor Florano, and also for our speakers from Bicol University and from Tanjungpura. Thank you very much for coming. And we have this very thoughtful and it's wonderful experience for this forum, and hopefully that we can have another one for the next occasions. Okay, so I think it's about time. So I would like to call for the wrap up of this forum, and I hope to see you next time on May 3rd. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.